In this module, we are going to consider the deriving of theological themes from a biblical book or letter. To start with, it is important to give consideration to the difference between the structure and contents and the themes of a book or a letter. We can illustrate this by first considering this image of a model aircraft kit, in contrast with a completed model aircraft. When we look at the two, what are the similarities? Well, firstly, it's the same aircraft depicted in both images. Secondly, the parts that we find in the kit and the parts that we find in the completed model are the same. Are there any other similarities that you can think of? At the same time, there are a number of differences. On the one hand, the kit is incomplete, while the model is complete. The kit is unconstructed, the model is constructed. In the kit, the focus is on the parts, whereas in the model, we see the whole. Any other differences? Ultimately, though, both images of the kit and the completed model are of the same item. It is only the perspective that is different. In the kit, the emphasis tends to be on the parts, whereas in the model, the emphasis is on the whole. Therefore, the kit can best be described by listing the parts, whereas the model can best be described overall. Describing the kit could include references to a list of the parts, a numbering of the components, a list of the accessories. Whereas in describing the model, we could include references to aircraft, war, flying. To parallel the kit and the completed model with any book, let's revise briefly. In the kit, we have said that the emphasis tends to be on the parts, whereas in the model, the emphasis is on the whole. Therefore, the kit is best described by listing the parts, whereas the model is best described overall. Therefore, the parts can parallel with the structure and content of a book or letter, whereas the whole can parallel with the themes that we find. To put this together, we have the kit, emphasizing the parts, which parallels with the structure and content of a book or letter. The completed model, emphasizing the whole, points us in the direction of the themes. Moving this on to the scriptures, we can therefore see that the parts, defined as the structure and content, moves us toward the structure or the outline and the content of a biblical book or letter, whereas the whole, focusing on the themes, moves us toward the theological themes of a biblical book or letter. Understanding that, let's now give consideration to a process that can be used for the deriving of theological themes. The basic procedure that I'm going to discuss involves 5 simple steps. The first step is to note the key concepts and words that we find in the book or letter we are considering. Now, there are a variety of ways of doing this, but the simplest is probably based on a systematic, repeated reading of the book or letter we're looking at. And as we do that, to pay attention to the key concepts and words that we come across. By basic and considered reading, I would suggest that a reading of the book or letter at least 5, 6, 7, 8 times is required. And while you're doing that, you may make use of various colored highlighters, colored pens, shapes, whatever you would choose, to begin to pick up on and to identify and mark what you see as key concepts and words. For example, if you're working through a particular book or letter and the word love is repeated regularly and reasonably consistently, or if the word love comes up very strongly in a particular section or sections, you may choose a yellow highlighter or a red pen to mark the word love. Having done that, you would have your book or your letter that would have now been marked with what you thought may well be key concepts and words. What you now need to do is to confirm the significance of those concepts and words. And perhaps the most important question to ask in doing this is something like the following. If this concept or word or words were removed, would the book still stand? In other words, would the removal of that concept and word significantly impact on the letter or book or not? If it does significantly impact, then it would be significant. If it doesn't, then you have probably misidentified that concept or word as significant. Following on from this, you need to develop concise theological themes. What I mean by this is that to simply use the word love as a theme is inadequate, because each book of the Scriptures, each letter in the Scriptures, carries a particular nuance, a particular emphasis that the writer wants to make. So what you need to do in this step is to say, what about love do we find in this book or letter? And you may state it something like this: the importance of love amongst Christian believers, or the love of God demonstrated in Jesus Christ. You see, the difference now is that you're not talking about a broad generic love. What you're giving is a good positive sense of what this book or letter is emphasizing with respect to love. I would suggest that you look at that development being written in one sentence of about 7 to 10 words, occasionally more, but definitely not much more than 1 or 2 lines. Having completed that, you now need to take the time to briefly describe each theological theme. This will be illustrated in a moment, but for now it's suffice to say that you want to write probably at least a paragraph which briefly describes the theological theme as found in that given letter or book. So if you're talking about the love between Christian believers, you're going to say a little bit more about what the letter says about that love. Perhaps what its nature is, what the foundation is of it, how it should be worked out, what the implications are. If you're talking about the love of God in Jesus Christ, you would be doing the same, and developing the idea of how it is that God's love is seen for us in Jesus Christ. And the final step is to list key relevant sections from the book or letter that relate to your description of the theological theme. At this point, the basic question you could ask yourself is to imagine that someone has come to you and said that they don't agree with you. In this way, you can show them, you can direct them to the parts of the book or letter on which you have based this theological theme. Once that is completed, you may further develop the content and understanding of the theological themes that you have identified. In some cases, this may be part or all of an assignment for college. In other cases, some of you may still one day write a doctoral or master's thesis, maybe even write a book, in which case the development of the theme or themes may run to 80,000 words or 200 to 300 pages. However, all of that will be built on the initial work done in terms of these 5 basic steps.